Hey guys, Clear and Present Prepping here, coming to you with a video concerning the coronavirus outbreak in China. Um, okay, so there are many questions, many things about this virus that many people have. Many people are not exactly sure what's really going on. There's rumors, there are kind of myths going around about this virus, and just generally misinformation or lack thereof in many cases. So I'm not going to really spend too much time with this intro. I'm just going to jump straight into it. So, what is a coronavirus? Well, the coronavirus is really a family of viruses. It's not really a specific virus. They can range anything from like your common cold to like the SARS virus that broke out around 2002, 2003, or the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. Essentially, this virus can range in severity. That's apparent. The symptoms usually include like a runny nose, a headache, cough, sore throat. Typical feeling of just not feeling well. Fever, shortness of breath. Those type things. In comparison to viruses like the flu, bird flu, Ebola, there is really not as severe, but still a concern nonetheless, as any virus should. Um, so, what we do know about this virus is that it is something to be taken seriously. It appeared in Wuhan, China, so sometime in December. Uh, it's not really sure and people are not sure where it really came from. There's some speculation that came from a meat market from that area, but many are still kind of speculating to where it really came from. But it appeared in December. First couple of cases started showing up. Uh, it was really not known until first people started dying. So I think you can thank the Chinese authorities for that. But the cases currently stand at about 8,000 roughly, and the death toll stands at about 170. I forget the actual numbers here, but generally speaking, this virus has warranted concern from not only the Chinese authorities but from the international community as a whole. So, in response, the Chinese have quarantined the city of Wuhan along with other cities. Not long after Wuhan shut down, local authorities decided to restrict travel to and from several cities. Now, I'm not Chinese, so I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the names and all that. But long story short, we're talking about cities filled with millions of people. Wuhan itself has 11 million. So for those who are thinking, okay, this virus is not severe, that this virus may just be some kind of, what do you call it? Some kind of blown up, or what do you call it? Hype. I would quickly say you might be kind of crazy because you don't shut down a city full of 11 million people and other cities filled with millions of people because China has billions of people. But you don't shut down cities like that when it's just some kind of little minuscule virus. Now, this could just be a precaution, and likely it is. But for China to sit there and actually close off cities with millions of people in there over a virus that's infected a few thousand suggests two things. Either this virus is really serious and they're not really acknowledging that, or simply there may be more cases and not being entirely transparent about that. Whichever the case, it doesn't really matter at this point. But in addition to that, what the Chinese have done is obviously has not gone unnoticed, and it has warranted many actions by surrounding nations and the international community. Just today, the World Health Organization declared a public health emergency. As of the timing of the filming of this video, probably about a little less than an hour ago. And generally, what that means is, they're advising nations to enact travel restrictions, basic concern, just to raise awareness of that this virus has the potential to become a pandemic. So just to clarify that now, it is actually an epidemic now. It's not a pandemic. What would make it a pandemic is if it not only spreads to other nations, but starts, killing people in other nations, or, spreading from human to human in these other nations. So currently, while there are cases in several different countries around this world, including the United States, no one has yet contracted the virus from people that have been put into quarantine. The only exception is the spouse of a woman in, I believe, Chicago. Her husband contracted the virus. So that's the first case of human-to-human contact we've seen outside of China. So just so for the record, that would be the United States. Because of this, airports are starting to screen passengers arriving to and from China, but just generally areas outside the country. And the reason for that is you want to make sure you catch this thing before it manages to get inside our borders. That's not just the borders within the United States. That's, the European Union, Great Britain, and other countries around the world. So with that being said, other nations have taken more drastic measures. Russia, I think within a few hours of this recording, closed their border with China. It's largely just making sure that, people from China don't really enter the country unless they've been screened. I don't know all the details, so I'm not going to attempt to talk to you like I know what I'm saying here. But yeah, so I have heard rumors that the White House is considering the travel bans. I know that there are some, or either travel bans or restrictions. I'm not sure which one. But if they do start imposing travel bans, we could see many other nations do the same. I think Russia just kind of decided to break the ice and get this ball rolling. But yeah, so other things we know, nations are starting to remove their citizens. Diplomats and their families are starting to be recalled, largely to prevent, their own citizens from having to suffer should this get any worse. Actually, just yesterday, 200 American nationals were evacuated from Wuhan by the United States government. They were flown. I think it was a charter jet. I'm not exactly sure, but they were flown to Anchorage, Alaska, where they were screened. But then they were flown to the California at a Air Force Air Reserve base in California. I'm not sure what the actual name of it is. You can tell me in the comment section, or I'll just look it up after this. But yeah, so I know other nations are preparing to do the same, including Great Britain, Japan, Algeria, a number of nations. From what I've heard, the Brits are having a hard time getting their citizens out, largely due to their citizens having families, Chinese families, people with dual nationalities who are not allowed to return to the UK. So that's becoming problematic. Some people are starting to criticize the responses of other nations. For instance, Australia decided to fly its citizens to, I think, what's it called? Christmas Island? I don't want to don't quote me on that. But I do know they're flying them to an island, typically used as a detention center for felons, for screening, quarantine for at least 14 days. Just as a precaution, people are comparing this to, I don't say comparing this to, but they're sending people to prison where they're going to be screened. So I do know a couple of people aren't really happy about that. So, but yeah, so that's generally what we know. To summed up, now, is this virus a threat? Yes, it's a threat. any virus is a threat. It all depends on the severity of it. Now, no, this is not as severe or as dangerous. The virus itself is not as dangerous as viruses like Ebola, as far as I know, SARS, stuff like that, or just your basic influenza. But that doesn't mean that this shouldn't be taken seriously. As of today, this virus has already infected more than the SARS pandemic back in 2003, 2002. Have the death toll, however, has not reached nearly even half of what SARS was. I think SARS stood at about 700 deaths, 8,000 people infected. Currently, again, this virus is standing at about 8,000 people infected, and then 170 dead. And then just to compare this, Ebola killed, well, if I'm correct, 11,000 people. I don't remember how many people were infected. But yeah, and then, flu viruses. The seasonal flu kills thousands of people in the United States and around the world every year. So while it's not as severe, 8,000 people, though they're mostly concentrated in China, but 8,000 people around the world infected, that's a pretty serious thing. And the fact that it can transmit, unlike Zika and all that, through the air, is something that is particularly worrying, because that means now any one person can walk into a public place and infect anyone around them, or even after they've left the area. If they were to sneeze or cough on their hand, touch things, the droplets from the spit or saliva that comes out of mucus that comes out of their mouths and nose, that can land on objects around them. And these things obviously can survive on these objects. So someone touches them, that's how they get infected. So it's not a matter of the severity of the virus itself, but it's the fact that it can spread, and it can kill people. So that's evident. So of course this is China we're talking about, and I mean no offense, but most most of the deaths, all the deaths we've seen, are in China, not in the other countries affected. Now, this could largely be due to the fact that China is dealing with 8,000 people infected, well, roughly. So if that's the case, then perhaps it's because of the fact that the United States only has 5 people infected, well, 6 maybe, yeah, 6 people infected. They can concentrate. It's not overwhelming the system. So that's my attempt to explain why this virus is a threat, but not as severe. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the next question most people have been asking is, can this virus become a pandemic? Yes, it can become a pandemic. The reason being is for the reasons I pretty much just said. This can transmit in the air. So again, like I said, a person goes around to a public place, an airport. Say they get past the airport, a grocery store, airlines. It's a breeding ground, because now you're looking at multiple people in the same area. I mean, one person can infect 10 people just around them, just by passing by in a few minutes, a few seconds in these places. Many more, in a lot of other cases. So you take that and multiply it. For every person infected, it grows exponentially. So that is the real threat here. And so if, say, one person from the United States say a person in China or from China infects someone from the United States, Great Britain, France, or somebody from South America, for that person is going to infect multiple people around them from potentially various other countries or places within their own country. And each person, I guarantee you, is going to go off in their own direction to various other cities or regions. So you're looking at a spread that, if left unchecked, can go to just about any part of the globe, except Greenland. That's a little Pandemic Inc. joke there. People who play that game will know what I'm talking about. But so long story short, yeah, that's the real danger here, and that's how it can become a pandemic. So um, that's why, in my opinion, it might be time to enact travel restrictions and outright bans, to really contain this. Um, so worst case scenario, um, one thing we could see is this virus, to kind of start getting out of control, particularly in China. We've seen our first case of people transmitting it within the United States. So, say they are not able to keep track of everybody um, who goes in and out of the country. I mean, every time a new virus shows up, when they find, they find a patient zero, they have to go back and find everyone they've been in contact with. And while that's typically successful, um, you are looking at a possibility where you may not be able to track down everybody. You're assuming in order for this to be a success, you have to be able to track down everyone that person's been in contact with, and uh, get to them before they manage to get in contact with others and spread it wherever they may be. And then this requires multiple countries coordinating, not just within the United States or Europe, but elsewhere in the world. So worst case scenario, yeah, that could happen. We could start to see, emergency, actions taken, quarantines, uh, uh, travel bans, and just general fear in the population. That could cause people to run to the bank, to stores, trying to buy surgical masks, disinfectants, food, water, because with quarantines, that includes travel restrictions within not only your own country, city, state, but heck, neighborhood. I mean, that's how serious this can be. And while I don't think that they would rush to do something like this, depending on the severity of it, it could. There's a possibility that they could happen, and there's always that possibility that kind of makes these things a little scary. So if that was to happen, things like the economy could suffer. Potentially, millions will be affected, even those who are not sick. So um, hopefully, we never have to see that happen. We don't want that. So I end this with how to prepare for that worst case scenario. Um, I made a video, God knows how long ago, talking about pandemics, talking about some of the major pandemics, major outbreaks and epidemics that have happened even within recent time, of course, when that video was filmed. So in that video, I talk about how to prepare for it. I give basic general advice, but I try not to be too lengthy with. I try not to go into too much detail considering the length of the video itself. So I left out a lot of things, but I just kept basic general information. I gave basic general information. But yeah, so if you want, you can go check out that video. I know that other channels have information that can help you with that, probably more than I could. You can check out Canadian Prepper and City Prepper, and just generally, any prepping channel or online source that could actually, or like any website, the CDC, the FEMA, any organization that deals with these type of issues and topics. Check out their websites and see what they tell you. Now, I tell you, take what they say and probably make it double. Do more because, they try to not instill fear and instill cause panic, but sometimes you need that to get your points across. So that's just my own personal opinion. But just to shoot you a few suggestions, I would keep things like hand sanitizer, other disinfectants like Lysol and stuff on hand. I would keep, gloves and N95 face masks, not surgical mask, but the N95 dust mask. Typically, those are the ones that protect 95%, protect you from 95% of the particles in the air, uh, and that's where the virus is being transmitted, through particles in the air, droplets and stuff like that. It doesn't mean you're 100% safe. It just means that the chances that you're going to get infected are reduced significantly, or at least somewhat. I mean, that's important. And then lastly, I would just say, maintain at least a 2-week supply of food and water, basic preparedness stuff. That way, you won't, if this was to really go south, you won't be caught unprepared and without basic stuff to survive, say a quarantine or general panic or unrest. I doubt it's going to get there. But it's always best to be safe than sorry. And in addition to that, just stay alert, stay informed, be monitoring this. Don't think that this is just going to just go away. I mean, it's going to go away, but don't be caught with your pants down. Stay informed, stay up to date, and just keep in your thoughts and prayers. And just so that's what I know so far about the virus. That's what I've heard, been told, researched. You can search for yourself. There are many websites and many channels news channels that are giving live updates with this virus, particularly CNN and all that. So in my opinion, I don't think this is going to become serious. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I do not think that this virus will really amount to much. This could be, Ebola was more dangerous and it burned itself out. It took a lot of people with it, but it was not as bad as many people crying wolf thought it would be. So, again, like I said, just stay up to date, and we'll just see how this plays out.